Svetya, Orin of Kosel. Leaving was the second hardest thing Svetya had ever done. That night her mother had shaken her awake, voice hoarse with worry. "Wake the twins! They are coming for Papa, for the Orin. The palace has already fallen. We must hurry." The hardest thing had been leaving them all behind when the fanatics caught up to her father's carriage. It had been a long journey. The remnants of the bear guard were ragged, their mounts exhausted. Many were wounded during their midnight flight. Even once they had made it to the countryside, away from the worst violence of the revolt and its sympathizers, there were hazards. There had always been dangers in Kosel, something that had made her father proud. The morning before their panicked escape, he had told her, "We are a hardy people, Svetya. We have to be. Kosel prospers because its people are stubborn and tough." He had grinned, ruffling her hair. "Much like its future Orin." That memory hurt now, but she clung to it. There were people of Kosel here, and Argenport, and the surrounding southern lands. Some traveled, some traded, and others dealt in more specialized fields. Svetya hoped that her countrymen still recognized the crown, and were free of the fervor that filled those who had taken the palace. But she was not here for them. Long ago, Argenport and Kosel had signed a treaty, an oath of friendship and assistance between two noble powers. Her father had warned her that as Orin, she must honor Kosel's part in the treaty, as he had inherited the responsibility from his mother. Now Svetya was calling upon that oath. She needed troops if she was to retake her home. In fact, as her cohort climbed the last large hill between them and the city, they could already hear an uproar, the shouting of many people, the clank of arms and armor. Svetya wondered how large Argenport was, and if the rumors of its winged soldiers were true. Then she saw the smoke. Oh, Argenport was besieged. There was a horde at its gates, and they appeared entrenched. Svetya looked at the remnants of her father's bear guard. Their eyes were sunken with fatigue, and their faces fell further as they surveyed the chaos. No matter. Caiaphas and Argenport had sworn an oath to the rulers of the Kosel Empire, an oath they would uphold. Svetya cleared her throat. "You know, the Orin my father once told me that we are a hardy and very stubborn people." There was a tired laughter from her father's men, and Svetya felt the weight of their gaze. People of Kosel have always prospered in the face of peril. This is no different. She saw them start to nod and raise a fist. "Onward to Argenport!" With a ragged, halting cheer, they started down the hill. As they marched, Svetya heard one of her father's, no, her, men start to hum a marching song, drowning out the sounds of the camp ahead. Other Kosel voices joined in, beaten but not broken. "Papa, Mama, Cameron, Marcos, I won't let them get away with this. I won't abandon our home. I will return." Chapter 19. The Fall of Argenport. Argenport was rarely quiet, but now the city was heavy with uncertainty. Rumors from the spire claimed that the Lord Regent was dead, gunned down in cold blood, and efforts to quell the story were no match to the stomach-churning dread that had spread across the city. The clans were at the gates. Everyone knew it was coming, but no one knew when. Orders from on high came down. The city must hold, at any price. The peacekeepers swept civilians off the streets as civic life ground to a halt. The Crown Watch emptied its barracks, arming every last reserve and recruit. They even looked the other way when less savory characters joined their ranks. Now was not the time to ask questions. While defenses coalesced behind the gates, Valkyrie squadrons held the skies above the walls, dotting the night like green stars. Beyond the walls, the clans were not quiet. Their initial assault had been pushed back, but just barely. Blood had been spilled, and the clouds gathered on the horizon. Sky serpents shrieked, tasting the coming rain and thunder, as the storm-caller's chants climbed and fell on the wind. From her command, Eileen strode to the head of the horde, blade held high. As she walked past, each clan began its ancestral chant of war. The drums and howls built upon one another, drowning out the thunder, uniting in a single song of imminent violence. Slowly Eileen lowered her sword, until it pointed straight at the iron-bound main gate of Argenport. There was a blinding flash and an earth-shaking peal of thunder, as a torrent of lightning blew the gates off their hinges. The clans bellowed and charged. The serpent riders were the first over the walls, raining volleys of ice and steel on the defenders below. The Valkyrie rose to challenge them, voices raised in clarion defiance. The two forces met in mid-air, claws shattering silver wings, and swords spilling serpent blood onto the battle below. The barbarians roared over the smoking remnants of the gate like an avalanche, crushing anyone in their path. The Crown Watch answered with a battle cry of their own. For a moment the line held, and hope flared in the hearts of the city's weary defenders. The Cabal broke first. Thugs and brigands, used to strong-arming people from alleyways, didn't have the nerve to stand in open combat. They ran. Many were cut down as they fled, and others faded back into the dark corners of Argenport. Then the Crown Watch found themselves outnumbered. Tinkers scuttled between the lines, desperately repairing armor and fallen Valkyrie's wings, while the remaining defenders raised their shields in a desperate last stand. It was too little, too late. More of the horde scaled the walls, flanking the remnants of the Crown Watch. Axe shattered shield, and clans closed in. Argenport had fallen. The throne was cool to Eileen's touch. It had seemed larger when he had sat in it, brooding in his unknowable ambitions. But the throne was not his any longer. Caiaphas, what happened to you? The city and the throne were hers, by marriage, by conquest, and by right. She turned to her queen's guard. Enough. Sound the horn. Put an end to the looting. Gather everyone. The city has suffered enough. Daraka blinked. Clanmother? An order like this would have been the death of another clan leader. But Daraka and the chieftains had watched Eileen demolish the gates of Argenport, and had seen the example she made of her brother. Eileen held Daraka's gaze, glaring at him. The large man looked away first. Aye, my queen, it will be done. Less than an hour later, a crowd had gathered in the square beneath the spire. Crown Watch, clans, and civilians all stood apart, and the air was thick with animosity. She needed to seize this moment, before the tension boiled over into fresh violence. Eileen stepped out onto the balcony, a touch of magic making her voice boom over the people like a peal of thunder. People of Argenport, clanfolk, heed me. Years ago, when I first came to Argenport, proud citizens sneered and named me the Queen of the Wilds. And I was. I am. But those of us who have survived the wilds know the truth. We are stronger together. The crowd stirred. This was not what they were expecting. Caiaphas offered me a peace treaty that would strengthen both our peoples, and, though it angered many, I agreed. When the Iron Fist tore the city apart to crush the rebellion, I treated with the owls to guide your refugees to safety. All of you know me. I have lived among you both. Now Roland is dead, and criminals have infested the spire. I return to retake my throne, not as a conqueror, but as clan mother and rightful queen. There was silence in the squares below. Now my work begins.